The moment someone calls the sheriff before checking the property records, they have already lost. The first thing I noticed that Saturday morning was not the flashing lights waiting in the distance or the electronic gate blocking the entrance to Willow Ridge Estates. It was the smell of fresh cedar mulch drifting across the perfectly landscaped median while automatic sprinklers clicked in perfect rhythm beneath a bright Texas sky. Everything looked peaceful, polished, and expensive, exactly the image the neighborhood wanted the world to see. Then I eased my pickup truck toward the stone entrance, and the illusion ended. Patricia Dawson stepped directly into the driveway before my front tires reached the gate. She wore a crisp ivory blazer despite the growing heat. A thick leather Homeowners Association binder tucked confidently beneath one arm, as though it carried more authority than the county courthouse itself. Her expression never suggested uncertainty. It suggested victory. Behind her stood the security booth, polished limestone columns, decorative iron fencing, and a bronze neighborhood monument that reflected the morning sunlight so brightly it almost looked theatrical. A security guard remained beside the gate with both hands folded awkwardly in front of him, clearly wishing he were somewhere else. Residents began slowing their morning walks. A man pushing a stroller stopped beside the sidewalk. Two neighbors carrying coffee cups quietly turned toward the entrance. Patricia always seemed to know how to gather an audience before making a point. She raised one hand toward my windshield. "You are not entering this neighborhood today," she announced loudly enough for every nearby homeowner to hear. I shifted my truck into park and lowered the window. Warm air filled the cab, carrying the scent of freshly cut grass and flowering shrubs planted around the entrance. "Good morning," I replied. "I am simply driving through." She smiled without warmth. "You already admitted you are not part of this homeowners association. That means you have no right to use this entrance." I looked briefly at the impressive stonework surrounding the gate before returning my attention to her. "Being outside your homeowners association does not automatically make me wrong." She laughed softly and turned toward the gathering neighbors. "He actually believes that," she said. Several people exchanged uncertain glances, unsure whether they should be watching or walking away. Patricia removed her phone from her blazer pocket and pressed a number without hesitation. "County Sheriff's Office," she said confidently after the call connected. "I have an individual refusing to leave private association property after repeated warnings." She spoke slowly, making certain every word reached the growing crowd. I never interrupted. There are moments when explaining too early only delays the truth. This was not the time to argue. It was the time to wait. My own phone rested quietly inside the cup holder beside me. The screen remained dark, but I knew exactly what was happening several miles away inside a title company's recording department. Earlier that morning, I had signed closing documents for a forgotten parcel almost nobody remembered existed. The transaction had already been funded. Only one final confirmation remained before the county officially recognized the new ownership. Patricia folded her arms with complete confidence after ending the call. "The deputies will be here shortly," she announced. "They will explain why your opinion does not matter." I simply nodded. "Maybe," I answered calmly. "Or maybe they will explain why recorded ownership matters more than assumptions." She shook her head as though I had said something ridiculous. The security guard glanced between us without speaking. Somewhere above the entrance, a mockingbird landed on the bronze monument before taking flight again. The sprinklers continued their steady clicking across the emerald lawns while another gentle vibration came from my phone. I looked down for only a second. The notification preview was short enough to fit on a single line. "Recording in final review." I locked the screen without changing my expression. Patricia believed the next few minutes would become the story everyone in Willow Ridge Estates remembered. She was right. She simply had no idea that before the sheriff could finish listening to her complaint, the ground beneath the entrance where she proudly stood was about to belong to someone else. My name is Logan Brooks, and long before that morning at the entrance of Willow Ridge Estates, I learned that people trust appearances far more than public records. That habit has created fortunes for some investors and expensive mistakes for everyone else. I spent almost 20 years investing in commercial real estate, purchasing overlooked properties that most buyers ignored because they focused only on what they could see instead of what the county actually recorded. My work rarely involved glamorous buildings or luxury developments. More often it involved forgotten easements, abandoned railroad corridors, misplaced title documents, and narrow strips of land that looked worthless until someone finally understood where they were located. Every transaction began the same way. Before I ever visited a property, I studied warranty deeds, county plats, tax maps, title commitments, and historical surveys. I trusted recorded documents more than confident opinions because opinions disappear when ownership changes, but properly recorded deeds remain long after everyone involved has moved away. That philosophy shaped every investment I made, including the small ranch house where I had lived for the past 3 years. My property sat just outside Willow Ridge Estates, surrounded by mature oak trees, split-rail fencing, and enough open pasture that mornings still smelled like fresh earth after the irrigation system finished running before sunrise. It was quiet, private, and completely outside the Homeowners Association. That last detail mattered to me because I preferred maintaining my own property without committees deciding the color of my mailbox or the length of my grass. My relationship with most of the neighborhood had always been pleasant. I waved to families walking their dogs, chatted with neighbors at the local hardware store, and occasionally drove through the entrance simply because it connected more directly to the county highway. Nobody questioned it during my first 2 years there. Everything changed after. Patricia Dawson became determined to treat the entrance as though it represented absolute authority instead of simple access. Around the same time, Willow Ridge Estates invested heavily in renovations. Massive limestone columns replaced the original sign. Decorative iron gates appeared beside a newly built security booth. Elegant landscaping stretched farther toward the county road than I remembered from earlier subdivision maps. At first I admired the improvements. Then curiosity quietly replaced admiration. Something about the proportions looked different. I had reviewed enough subdivision plats over the years to recognize when construction extended farther than expected. One evening, I downloaded the most recent county parcel map and compared it with archived subdivision records stored in the public database. Most of the boundaries matched perfectly. Then I noticed a narrow tract identified as Parcel 18C. Unlike every surrounding lot, it remained under separate ownership and had never transferred to the original subdivision developer. The legal description placed it beneath part of the entrance roadway, the decorative monument, the security booth, and the electronic gate itself. I stared at the screen for several minutes before printing the map and highlighting the parcel boundary with a yellow marker. At that moment, it was simply an interesting discovery. I had no intention of buying anything. Still, years of experience taught me that unusual property records deserve another look because forgotten parcels rarely stay forgotten forever. All they need is one person willing to read beyond the surface, and without realizing it, I had just become that person. Patricia Dawson never raised her voice because she thought she needed to. She raised it because she believed confidence could replace verification if enough people were listening. During her 6 years as president of the Willow Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, she had become the face of the neighborhood. She attended every board meeting, inspected every landscaping project, approved every architectural request, and rarely missed an opportunity to remind residents how much the association had improved their property values. To most homeowners, she represented organization, stability, and order. The entrance itself had become her favorite accomplishment. The towering limestone columns, decorative iron gate, polished bronze monument, colorful flower beds, and neatly designed security booth all reflected the image she wanted visitors to see. She often stood near the entrance speaking proudly about how the Homeowners Association had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars transforming an ordinary subdivision into one of the most desirable communities in the county. Very few people questioned whether the land beneath those improvements actually belonged to the association. They simply assumed it did because everything looked permanent. I first met Patricia only a few weeks after buying my ranch house. She welcomed me politely enough before asking where I planned to submit my Homeowners Association registration forms. When I explained that my property was located outside the subdivision and was not governed by the association, she smiled politely but never completely accepted the answer. Over the following months, I received newsletters, invitations to community events, architectural guidelines, and eventually invoices requesting annual Homeowners Association dues. At first, I assumed someone had entered my address incorrectly. I politely mailed copies of my recorded deed and county parcel map showing my property outside the subdivision boundaries. The letters stopped briefly before returning again with stronger language. This time the envelopes contained late fees, compliance notices, and warnings stating that unauthorized use of the neighborhood entrance could result in penalties. I read every page carefully before placing each document into a file cabinet drawer labeled Willow Ridge Estates. Years in commercial real estate had taught me never to throw away paperwork, especially when the paperwork was based on assumptions instead of recorded facts. Meanwhile, Patricia continued expanding the association's confidence. Security cameras appeared around the entrance. Decorative lighting illuminated the monument every evening. New landscaping stretched farther toward the county road, making the entrance appear even larger than before. Watching the construction from a distance, I noticed something Patricia never seemed interested in discussing. Every improvement increased the importance of Parcel 18C, the forgotten strip of land resting beneath much of the entrance itself. Curiosity finally pushed me to investigate its ownership history. County records showed the parcel had never been transferred to the original developer during construction of Willow Ridge Estates. Instead, it remained inside the estate of a retired ranching family, whose remaining assets were now being managed by an estate attorney preparing several overlooked properties for sale. I made a quiet telephone call introducing myself as a potential buyer interested in one specific parcel. The attorney paused before answering with obvious surprise. He admitted nobody had asked about Parcel 18C in more than 20 years. He also confirmed the family intended to liquidate every remaining asset once probate paperwork was complete. I thanked him, requested the title information, and ended the conversation without telling anyone else. At that moment, the forgotten parcel was no longer just an interesting discovery inside county records. It had quietly become an opportunity. And the more Patricia insisted the entrance belonged entirely to the association, the more convinced I became that someone eventually needed to verify what the public records had been saying all along. The following week unfolded exactly the way experienced investors often expect important transactions to unfold. Quietly. There were no dramatic meetings, no secret negotiations, and no public announcements. Every meaningful step happened inside title offices, county databases, and conference calls where people cared far more about legal descriptions than emotional opinions. While Patricia continued sending notices reminding me that I was no longer welcome to use the neighborhood entrance, I spent my evenings reviewing every page the estate attorney forwarded to me. The title commitment arrived first, followed by historical deeds, probate documents, tax statements, and archived survey maps dating back decades. I spread everything across the large oak table inside my home office, poured another cup of black coffee, and compared each legal description line by line against the current county parcel map. Every document confirmed the same surprising fact. Parcel 18C had never been conveyed to the original subdivision developer. It had remained inside the ranching family's estate through every ownership transfer while the neighborhood gradually expanded around it. The entrance became more impressive with every renovation, but the underlying ownership never changed. The more evidence I gathered, the more carefully I slowed down. Good real estate decisions are rarely made because an opportunity exists. They are made because every question has been answered before the money changes hands. I ordered an updated title search, requested tax verification, and confirmed there were no outstanding liens, boundary disputes, or unresolved probate claims affecting the parcel. Every response came back clean. The estate attorney eventually called me late one afternoon while sunlight filtered through the live oak trees outside my office window. He explained that the family wanted to finalize every remaining asset before closing the estate permanently. Parcel 18C was considered too small and unusual to attract ordinary buyers, which was exactly why nobody else had shown any interest. I asked one simple question. If we agree on the purchase price today, how quickly can we close? He laughed softly before answering. Faster than you probably expect. We reached an agreement that afternoon. The purchase price was remarkably modest compared with the strategic importance of the land. I signed the purchase agreement electronically, wired the earnest money the following morning, and scheduled the closing with a local title company for the first available appointment. Throughout that entire process, I never contacted Patricia, never attended a board meeting, and never mentioned the transaction to anyone living inside Willow Ridge Estates. There was nothing to debate because ownership is not determined by neighborhood opinion. It is determined by properly recorded documents. Ironically, Patricia unknowingly helped confirm I was making exactly the right decision. 2 days before closing, another certified envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was the strongest notice yet. The Homeowners Association declared that because I had ignored previous warnings, I was permanently prohibited from entering through the main gate. The letter concluded by stating that any future attempt to use the entrance would result in immediate contact with the county sheriff for criminal trespassing. I read the final paragraph twice, smiled to myself, and carefully placed the notice into the same leather document folder holding my purchase agreement. Then I checked the calendar on my desk. My closing appointment and Patricia's promised confrontation were scheduled for the very same Saturday morning. Sometimes timing is simply a coincidence. Other times it quietly becomes the detail that changes an entire story before anyone realizes the ending has already begun. Closing day began before the sun had fully cleared the tops of the live oak trees surrounding the title company's office. The parking lot was almost empty when I arrived, and the cool morning air still carried the faint scent of damp pavement from the overnight irrigation system. Inside, everything felt familiar. Fresh coffee, neatly stacked closing folders, polished wood furniture, and the quiet rhythm of printers preparing legal documents reminded me of hundreds of transactions I had completed over the years. The closing officer greeted me with a warm smile before placing a carefully organized packet on the conference table. Every document had already been reviewed by the title examiner, but habit kept me reading every page anyway. I checked the legal description against the county plat one final time. Parcel 18C matched every historical record I had collected over the previous weeks. The purchase agreement, title commitment, tax certificates, probate documents, and warranty deed all aligned perfectly. Nothing had been overlooked. I signed each page deliberately while the notary completed every required acknowledgement. Once the final signature dried, the closing officer submitted the electronic recording package directly to the county recorder through the electronic filing system. She looked across the table and smiled. "Funding has been confirmed," she said. "The documents are now in the recording queue. Once the county accepts the filing, ownership will officially transfer." I thanked her, placed my copies inside the same leather document folder that also contained every notice Patricia had mailed me, and walked back into the warm Texas morning feeling remarkably calm. There was no excitement, because successful real estate transactions rarely depend on emotion. They depend on preparation. During the drive toward Willow Ridge Estates, my phone displayed a series of secure updates from the title company. Recording package received. County review in progress. Awaiting final acceptance. Each notification represented another step toward permanent ownership. Meanwhile, several miles away, Patricia was unknowingly preparing an entirely different event. Residents later told me she had informed several board members that morning that she intended to stop me publicly if I ever attempted to drive through the neighborhood entrance again. The security guard had already been instructed not to open the electronic gate under any circumstances. Several homeowners happened to be outside walking dogs, watering flower beds, or enjoying their coffee, creating exactly the audience Patricia always preferred whenever she believed she was about to prove a point. By the time I reached the entrance, everything had been arranged exactly as she wanted. She stood confidently between the limestone columns with her leather binder tucked beneath one arm, the polished bronze neighborhood monument shining behind her beneath the bright morning sun. She stepped directly in front of my truck before I reached the gate, announced loudly that I was no longer permitted to enter the community, and confidently called the county sheriff while nearby residents quietly gathered along the sidewalks. Throughout the entire confrontation, my phone remained inside the cup holder beside me. It vibrated once while Patricia spoke with the dispatcher. I glanced at the screen without unlocking it. A short notification appeared across the display. Recording under final county review. I locked the phone again before anyone noticed. Patricia believed she was only minutes away from having deputies remove me from property she insisted belonged entirely to the association. I knew those same few minutes could completely change who legally owned the ground beneath the entrance where she was standing, and all that remained was for the county recorder to press one final button. The distant sound of approaching sirens blended with the steady clicking of lawn sprinklers as two county sheriff patrol vehicles slowly turned toward the entrance of Willow Ridge Estates. Morning sunlight reflected across the polished limestone columns while the electronic gate remained firmly closed behind Patricia Dawson. She walked confidently toward the deputies before they had even stepped away from their vehicles, her leather binder already open to a collection of Homeowners Association rules, architectural guidelines, maintenance records, and subdivision maps. Her voice carried easily across the quiet neighborhood. She explained that I had repeatedly ignored official notices, refused to leave private community property, and continued trespassing despite multiple written warnings. The lead deputy listened patiently without interrupting, occasionally making notes before finally turning toward me. "Sir, I would like to hear your side." I stepped out of my truck slowly, closed the driver's door, and rested one hand on the leather document folder resting against my side. Warm air carried the scent of fresh grass and flowering shrubs across the entrance, while several nearby homeowners quietly gathered along the sidewalks pretending not to watch. "Thank you for coming," I said. "Before anyone decides whether I am trespassing, I believe we should verify exactly who owns the property we are standing on." Patricia smiled confidently. "There is nothing to verify," she replied. "This entrance belongs to the Homeowners Association." The deputy looked calmly between us. "Do either of you have documentation regarding ownership?" Patricia immediately handed him her binder. Inside were construction contracts, landscaping invoices, maintenance agreements, neighborhood maps, and photographs showing years of improvements made by the association. Everything appeared organized and professional. After reviewing several pages, the deputy returned the binder and looked toward me. I opened my leather folder and carefully removed the county parcel map, historical title documents, the signed warranty deed package, and the title company's closing paperwork. I placed everything neatly across the hood of my pickup truck. The deputy studied the highlighted parcel boundary, while another deputy compared the legal description with the accompanying survey map. "This parcel extends beneath the entrance?" he asked. "According to the county records, it does," I answered. Patricia immediately shook her head. "Those documents are not recorded yet," she insisted. "They do not prove current ownership." Before I could respond, my phone vibrated quietly inside my pocket. I removed it, unlocked the screen, and read the newest notification from the title company. The message was remarkably short. "Recording complete. Warranty deed accepted. Ownership officially transferred." I silently handed the phone to the lead deputy. He read the confirmation twice before comparing the parcel number displayed on the screen with the parcel number printed across the county plat lying beside it. They matched perfectly. He contacted County Dispatch through the patrol vehicle computer requesting immediate verification of the electronic recording. Several long minutes passed while complete silence settled across the entrance. Even the neighbors stopped whispering. Finally, the dispatcher confirmed that Parcel 18C now listed Logan Brooks as the recorded owner in the county system. The deputy slowly closed his notebook before looking toward Patricia. "Ma'am," he said respectfully, "the ownership records have been updated. Based on the information we have verified today, Mr. Brooks is now the recorded owner of this parcel." Every eye instinctively lowered toward the pavement beneath the electronic gate, the security booth, and the impressive stone monument. Without anyone noticing, the most important change that morning had not happened above ground where everyone had been arguing. It had happened inside the county recorder's office, and now the land beneath all of us legally belonged to me. The lead deputy remained completely calm, but I could tell the conversation had changed the moment County Dispatch confirmed the recording. He was no longer dealing with a simple complaint about someone refusing to leave private property. He was standing in the middle of a verified ownership dispute where the official records had changed only minutes before. He handed my phone back to me and carefully compared the recorded parcel number against the certified county plat spread across the hood of my truck. Every line matched perfectly. Patricia stared at the documents as though reading them long enough might somehow change what they said. Finally, she spoke. "That cannot possibly mean he owns the entrance," she insisted. "Our association paid for every improvement here. We built the gate, the security booth, the monument, the lighting, and all of the landscaping." The deputy nodded respectfully. Ownership of improvements and ownership of the underlying land are not always the same legal issue, ma'am. His answer settled over the entrance more effectively than any argument could have. One of the homeowners quietly whispered, "Is that actually true?" Another resident replied, Apparently it is. I unfolded a larger survey map from my document folder and laid it beside the county plat. The highlighted boundary crossed directly beneath the decorative stone monument before continuing under the electronic gate, the security booth, and a portion of the entrance roadway. The deputies followed the survey line with their eyes while comparing it against the surrounding improvements. One deputy finally looked toward the entrance itself before saying quietly, "Everything sitting inside this highlighted section appears to be located on parcel 18C. Patricia lowered her binder for the first time that morning. The confidence she had displayed only minutes earlier slowly gave way to careful silence. Around us, the neighborhood remained unusually still. Even the security guard stood motionless beside the closed gate, unsure whether he should continue preventing access or simply wait for instructions. I broke the silence as calmly as I had answered every question that morning. I did not purchase this parcel because I wanted to create problems for anyone living here, I explained. I purchased it because ownership should always be determined by public records instead of assumptions. The lead deputy closed his notebook and addressed both of us. Based on the verified information available today, this is clearly a civil property matter. Law enforcement is not going to remove anyone from the location. We encourage both parties to resolve any remaining issues through the appropriate legal process." Patricia looked toward the impressive entrance she had proudly managed for years before returning her attention to the survey map. For the first time since I had known her, she seemed to realize that every symbol of authority surrounding the neighborhood depended upon a narrow strip of land that nobody had bothered to verify before construction began years earlier. The irony was impossible to ignore. The association had invested hundreds of thousands of dollars improving an entrance whose legal foundation had remained unchanged since long before the first house was ever built. As the deputies prepared to leave, several homeowners approached quietly and asked whether they could look at the county plat for themselves. I handed it to them without hesitation. One by one, they followed the highlighted boundary across the page until their eyes reached the electronic gate standing only a few yards away. Nobody argued anymore because there was nothing left to debate. The record spoke with a clarity no raised voice could ever match. And in the span of a single morning, the conversation had shifted completely from accusations about trespassing to the undeniable reality that the land beneath the entire entrance now belonged to me. The sheriff deputies drove away without another question, leaving behind something far more powerful than a victory or a defeat. They left behind verified facts. By the following Tuesday morning, a certified letter from the attorneys representing Willow Ridge Estates arrived in my mailbox. The tone could not have been more different from the notices Patricia had mailed over the previous months. There were no threats, no warnings, and no demands. Instead, the letter respectfully requested a meeting to discuss the legal status of the entrance improvements resting on parcel 18C and to explore a practical solution that would protect both the neighborhood and the newly recorded ownership. I accepted the invitation immediately because I had never purchased the parcel to create unnecessary hardship for hundreds of families who had done nothing wrong. A week later, we gathered inside a county conference room overlooking rolling Texas pasture beneath a bright afternoon sky. Attorneys, title professionals, surveyors, engineers, insurance representatives, and several Homeowners Association board members filled the long conference table with county plats, aerial photographs, title reports, engineering drawings, easement templates, and maintenance records. Patricia sat quietly near the end of the table, her familiar leather binder resting closed in front of her for the first time since I had known her. The association's attorney summarized the situation honestly. Historical title research confirmed that the original subdivision developer had never acquired parcel 18C before constructing the entrance. Years of landscaping, maintenance, repairs, and improvements had increased the value of the entrance, but they had never transferred ownership of the underlying land. Every survey, title report, and recorded deed reached the same conclusion. The discussion quickly shifted away from assigning blame and toward finding a lasting solution. Removing the entrance would have been expensive, disruptive, and completely unnecessary. Families relied on that entrance every day, and I had no desire to interfere with their lives simply because a legal mistake had gone unnoticed for decades. Instead, I proposed a permanent recorded easement allowing the Homeowners Association to continue using the entrance exactly as before while recognizing the recorded ownership beneath it. The agreement carefully defined maintenance responsibilities, insurance obligations, future repair access, landscaping rights, utility access, and annual compensation for the continued use of the parcel. Every page was reviewed line by line before anyone signed because none of us wanted future homeowners facing the same uncertainty again. Several weeks later, county survey crews installed permanent boundary markers beside the entrance and updated the public reference monuments so future construction would always begin with accurate information. The association also adopted new procedures requiring independent title verification before approving major improvement projects, ensuring assumptions would never replace public records again. During the next annual board election, Patricia chose not to seek another term as president. There were no dramatic speeches and no public embarrassment. New leadership simply promised greater transparency, stronger legal review, and closer cooperation with county records before making decisions affecting shared property. Looking back, I realized the most valuable thing I gained was never the narrow strip of land itself. It was watching an entire community replace certainty based on appearance with confidence built upon documented truth. The entrance remained beautiful. The gate continued opening every morning. Families kept enjoying the neighborhood they loved, and every improvement finally rested upon the same solid legal foundation that should have existed from the very beginning. Several months passed before I found myself driving through the entrance again just after sunrise, and for the first time since everything had happened, I noticed how ordinary it all felt. The electronic gate opened smoothly without hesitation. The limestone columns still stood proudly beneath the soft Texas sky, their warm color reflecting the early morning sunlight exactly as they had on the day Patricia tried to stop me. Fresh flower beds surrounded the entrance. The bronze monument remained polished, and the scent of newly cut grass drifted through my open truck window while sprinklers quietly watered the lawns along the boulevard. Yet one detail had changed forever. Near the edge of the landscaping, protected by a small stone border instead of hidden beneath decorative plants, stood a clearly marked boundary monument installed after the easement was recorded. Most people driving past would never notice it, but I smiled every time I saw it because that simple marker represented something far more valuable than ownership. It represented accuracy. I parked beneath a row of mature live oak trees and stepped out of the truck with the same leather document folder that had traveled with me from the title company on the morning everything changed. Inside were the recorded warranty deed, the permanent easement agreement, updated county plats, certified surveys, and the handwritten note a resident had mailed me thanking me for choosing cooperation instead of conflict. That letter remained one of the most meaningful documents in the folder because it reminded me that protecting property rights should never come at the expense of good neighbors. Families continued walking their dogs along the sidewalks. Children rode bicycles toward the neighborhood park, and nobody gave a second thought to who owned the narrow strip of land beneath the entrance anymore. That was exactly how it should be. The purpose of good legal records is not to create arguments. It is to prevent them before they ever begin. Looking back, I realized I had never truly won because someone else had lost. The real victory belonged to everyone living in Willow Ridge Estates. Future homeowners would inherit clear boundaries, properly recorded easements, and documents that accurately reflected the improvements surrounding them. Future board members would verify ownership before beginning construction instead of relying on assumptions. Future investors would see records matching reality instead of discovering forgotten mistakes decades later. As I closed the leather folder and placed it back on the passenger seat, I thought about how easily confidence can grow when nobody asks difficult questions. Patricia had believed years of maintenance created ownership. The neighborhood believed impressive stonework proved authority. The truth quietly waited inside county records until someone finally took the time to read them. I started the engine, eased my truck through the open gate, and continued toward the county highway while morning sunlight stretched across the pavement beneath my tires. Nothing dramatic happened because it did not need to. The story had never been about humiliating a homeowners association or proving someone wrong in front of a crowd. It had always been about respecting the simple principle that ownership is established by recorded facts, not confident opinions. Every time I pass that entrance now, I remember that the smallest parcel on a county map changed an entire neighborhood because one overlooked line on a recorded plat mattered more than years of assumptions. Justice never arrived with raised voices or flashing lights. It arrived quietly through preparation, patience, verified documents, and one properly recorded deed that allowed the truth to stand on its own long after everyone else had finished talking.